Welcome back to Falcons Central Radio Show on the Pro Football Central Radio Network. I am Aaron Freeman, founder of FalcFans.com. I am joined by my co-host and buddy Scott Karasik, formerly of Bleacher Report, but now exclusively with Pro Football Spot. We're back tonight to talk about the Atlanta Falcons. Our topics tonight include Julio Jones's contract negotiations, putting a button on the supplemental draft, and we'll continue our position-by-position breakdown of the Falcons roster this week by discussing the linebacker position. And, of course, we'll answer your mailbag questions at the end of the show. Helping us to do these things this week is none other than Colin Hubbard, the editor of Blogging Dirty. He also writes for Score Atlanta. You can hit up Colin on Twitter at Blogging Dirty. Welcome to the show, Colin.
Appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me.
Well, Scott, we're almost there. We got about, 2 more shows before training camp starts?
About that. It's not too bad.
Yeah, we've almost made it through the summer. We're chugging along ever so slowly. I guess let's talk about this Julio Jones contract negotiation. Von McClure of ESPN reported Monday that the Falcons and Jones haven't talked about a contract extension yet. I should stress the word yet. So I guess that first practice of training camp is July 30th, about 17 days away. Do you guys think Jones will be signed by then?
I don't know. I don't know if he'll sign by then. I don't know if it really matters if he signs by then. Roddy didn't really sign until about a week or two into training camp, so I'm not as worried about it.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's that big of a deal if he doesn't get it done by then. I don't expect him to, but hey, you never know. I mean, Matt Ryan signed, day one of training camp 2 years ago, which came as a little surprise. So I don't think we get it done, but he says he's not going to hold out and he's not, going to go that route as Des Bryant would do. So, I'm comfortable at it right now.
Okay. So if a deal doesn't get done before training camp, do you think it gets done before the season starts, or do you think it may drag into 2016 after the season?
I have a feeling it would probably drag into 2016. I don't see us getting it done this year, but it wouldn't surprise me. I just see it dragging on. I just hope it doesn't turn into a sticky situation as we roll into training camp 2016. I ultimately think we'll get the deal done. And both sides will come to a pretty solid agreement. I just hope we don't overpay for him like Des Bryant's going to want, and Thomas with him coming out today. The Broncos offered him $12 million, I think it was, today. So, we'll see how it plays out, but I don't think we'll get it done going into this season.
Okay.
I think we know that he's going to get a ridiculous ridiculous contract. We're definitely going to see something along the lines of, I'm going to say 6 years, $100 million, probably $49 million guaranteed. That's just, it's what's going to happen. It's what top-rate wide receivers get. And the Falcons can fit that under their cap situation for now and in the future very, very easily. Very easily.
Okay. Yeah, I think you'll get a deal that probably averages about $15 million a year. So I think we're probably looking at, probably pushing $100 million, but probably closer to 90, I'm thinking. And, it's debatable whether any wide receiver is worth that type of money, but it is what it is. He's going to get ridiculous money. He's going to be the second highest paid player on the team. So there's no doubt about that. So, I'm looking forward to it when we get him locked up long term. And, because he's the best player on the team right now. So.
Yep, I agree.
All right, guys, let's move on to the supplemental draft. We don't have to spend too much time on this, but obviously the Falcons were rumored to be, pursuing Clemson offensive tackle Isaiah Battle. He ultimately got selected by the St. Louis Rams, I think, in the 5th round of the supplemental draft last Thursday. Do you guys think the Falcons dodged a bullet by not getting Battle, or is it just no big deal?
I mean, I don't think they were ever actually going to select him. You could say that they dodged a bullet, but I just don't think that he's. I don't think he's good.
Yeah, I don't think we would have put. Yeah, we couldn't have put a fifth in, right? Because we lost that pick with a noise gate or whatever. But I don't think we ever had a shot at getting him. I wouldn't say we dodged a bullet. I think he might turn out to be a decent player, but there's just so many risks that come with him. Every time I hear his name, I just think of that uppercut, and I could watch that play over and over and over. But I don't think it really mattered. I would have been okay with him, maybe with a sixth or a seventh, but I guess the Rams can enjoy everything that ensues with him from now on.
Okay. Yeah, that vine of him uppercutting that guy is one of those vines that you just can't not look at over and over and over again. But I guess, some people were talking to me about, how the Falcons should get him just because with the injury to Lamar Holmes, they have a little bit of a void as a backup at left tackle. So I guess my question is, who do you guys think right now, if it's not going to be Holmes, if he ever gets healthy and comes back, who is the best candidate to be Jake Matthews' backup at left tackle? Is it Ryan Schrader, Tyler Columbus, Jake Rogers, Mike Person, or somebody else?
It's easily Schrader. Schrader's the only one with the actual footwork, strength, ability to be anywhere close.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. I think Schrader, Columbus is terrible. I know Scott feels the same way with that. Yeah, I like Schrader. I think he's got a lot of potential. He's shown flashes of brilliance at times, but has also shown some not so good things. But that comes with playing that position. But I would definitely say it's Schrader at this point.
Okay. I don't disagree. All right, guys, let's hit this linebacker discussion. We'll do the usual breakdown. Obviously, the linebackers that we'll be talking about tonight are Justin Durant, Paul Warlow. We talked a little bit about Brooks Reed last week when we did the edge players, so we'll skip those guys that are more the strong side linebackers and talk more about the middle weak side guys. But also in the roster, we have Joplo Bartu, Marquise Sproul, Derek Ikune, Boris Inyama, Nate Stupar, and Alan Bradford. So I think we all sort of agree that Durant and Warlow are going to be the starters. Do you guys think there's any chance that any of these other guys wind up winning a starting spot, sneaking out of nowhere and stealing a spot?
I mean, it's
I'd say
possible.
absolutely not, but yeah, go ahead.
I'd say it's possible that Marquise Sproul could steal the weak side linebacker spot and they move Durant over to middle. But other than that, I don't really see a way that there's another guy starting. Your boy Nate Stupar is not going to be a starter. I don't know if Alan Bradford, Acuna, or Anyama even make the team. So.
Okay. So with these guys, with Durant and Warlow being the starters, and obviously Brooks Reed also in the mix, when the Falcons go to nickel and they go to two linebackers, among those three starters, who do you think are the most likely to stay on the field for every down?
What do you think, Karasik?
I mean, I think it's going to be Warlow and Durant. Just because Bartu, even though he's slightly better in coverage than Warlow, he's not as good of a blitzer.
Right.
So I could see Warlow sticking around, being that blitzer. Sproul could come in, Bartu could come in, but the way that Quinn works, he has two linebackers that stick around, and then his strong side linebacker rotates around depending on what his nickel role is. A lot of times the strong side linebacker's nickel role is, a 3-3-5 lined up at the line attacking. The way that Atlanta used John Abraham back in 2012 in nickel sets with a lot of 3-3-5.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I think Sproul will definitely get a shot this year. It was really unfortunate to see him go down with a torn ACL. I was actually at training camp when that happened. Really unfortunate because, especially with Sean Weatherspoon's injury last year, who knows what Sproul could be as of right now going into 2015 if he had played all of last year. I definitely think he would have made the roster. So, there's nothing clear cut with him right now, but I definitely hope he gets a full shot, and I think he makes the team and makes an impact. What that role will be at the moment, it could be in middle or, like Scott said, on the outside behind Durant. He could possibly come in for Durant. So I agree with what he said. I think those two guys will definitely stay on the field, though, most of the time.
Yeah, I hate to be that guy, but I don't get the Marquise Sproul love. It's one of those things. I thought when we drafted him last year, he was okay, but coming off that injury, I mean, it always seems like there's one Falcon draft pick that gets hurt his rookie year and then never ends up making it. It's been like 7 years in a row where that's happened, and maybe Marquise Sproul breaks that streak, but if I'm looking at some of these other guys that are going to be competing for a job, with guys like Stupar and Bradford and Bartu, I don't necessarily see him. I think he's on the bubble, so maybe maybe I'm wrong. It won't be the first time, it won't be the last time, but I don't know. It just seems like he's a camp body at this point from my perspective, but who knows?
Well, you got to think, out of these, 8 guys, how many are the Falcons going to keep? Are they going to keep 4? Are they going to keep 5? Are they going to keep 7? I personally think they're only going to keep. I think they're going to keep 5 of them, and I think you got to pencil in Bartu as a backup just because he is a good special teams player, even though it may not show up in the special teams tackles or any of the stats there. He does fill his lane well when he's out there as a gunner. He does a good job blocking when he's on punt team and then going out as a gunner. I mean, he does a very, very good job as a special teamer. As a linebacker, he's mediocre, but if he's your backup, you've got at least an Ike Reese type there. And then Sproul, I think you've got potential there for a future starter, or at least someone who could come in behind Durant should Durant get hurt again and be okay. Kuna Nanyama.
We got to remember that Durant, he hasn't played that many full seasons in his career. When he's on the field, he's great. He's had a pretty solid career. He's bounced around from team to team with Detroit, Cowboys. Last year was playing great and went down with an injury. So I definitely agree with you, Aaron. Sproul is definitely, not a lock to make this team whatsoever. He's definitely going to have to battle it out with Bartu and Stupar and maybe even Bradford. I don't think Bradford has a chance of making this roster. Honestly, I think he's going to be one of the guys that gets cut. But I definitely think Sproul will get a shot. But like you said, there's no way you could say right now that he's going to make the team for sure, coming off an injury and all that.
Okay. Yeah, I look at the backups on this team, and I think Stupar. I'm gonna have to disagree with you again, Colin, but I think Bradford has a decent shot just because he's a pretty proven special teams player. Stupar also, I think Stupar was probably our 3rd or 4th best special teams player after Weems and Antone Smith last year. So I think if Keith Armstrong is going to have the influence on the roster, and it sounded like he did when he did his press conference, he's going to be able to, cherry pick who he wants to make the team just based off of special teams. I think that gives guys like Stupar and Bradford a leg up. I haven't seen Bartu really do anything on the rare occasions he's played special teams, but he hasn't really played a ton over the last 2 years, so maybe it's just a good special teams player that just hasn't really got an opportunity. I think Sproul has potential on special teams. I think Akuni or Akune or however you say his name in Ayama, I think they're probably practice squad guys. Scott and I talked about this a couple of shows ago when we first signed Ayama. I thought he looked pretty athletic, and I think, Quinn's scheme really likes athletic linebackers, and I think if that's going to help anybody, that's going to help a guy like Anyama make a shot at the practice squad, maybe get, a year or two in the practice squad and be developed as a strong side linebacker. I think that helps Bartu because I think he's probably, other than Durant, probably our most athletic linebacker on a roster. But, it's really kind of a open competition at this linebacker spot. Who's going to make the roster? You could probably sit here and tell me, it's going to be Sproul, Bradford, and Bartu, and I could believe it, or it could be Stupar, Bartu, and Akune that could make the team, and I could believe that too, because I don't think there's really any players that the coaching staff has a real strong investment in, since none of them were really guys that they brought in or drafted themselves. So it's going to be pretty wide open in training camp, and the best guys will end up making the roster.
That's exactly right. It's going to be an interesting battle to watch.
Yeah, but I think the starters are basically set, especially with how it looks like they've been using them in the offseason. The only guys even taking first-team snaps are Warlow and Durant.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. All right, you guys think there could be any possibility that the Falcons, after cuts are made, might end up trying to sign somebody, or I guess is there any chance that Durant or Warlow don't make the team as a surprise cut? Or I know Scott just said no, but Colin,
I don't see it. I think those two guys are clear cut, as long as neither one of them get injured. But yeah, I mean, I love Durant. I really hope he pans out for us, and I think Warlow definitely has his spot locked up just about. So I don't see either one of them going anywhere.
I mean, who do you sign? Brandon Spikes, who's slower than Warlow, pretty bad, just awful in the run game, awful in the passing game. Yeah, he was okay in the run game last year when he had a giant in front of him and Marcel Darius, but Atlanta doesn't have a Marcel Darius to take up 3 blockers. They don't. I like Soliai, but he's not Darius. Right. And without him, he's done. You don't go out and sign Lance Briggs. There's really just no one there. And the one that might have talent would be Jaquan Williams, formerly of the Giants, but he had a concussion last year.
I think you're underrating Brandon Spikes, but whatever.
He's not a good fit for the scheme. He's just not.
He's physical. I wouldn't say he's fast, but he's physical.
Yeah, he could play defensive end with how quick he is for the scheme, but that's about it.
All right. You guys got anything to add on these linebackers, or you want to jump into the mailbag?
I've got something.
Okay.
Then I could ask. We've been talking about. Outside of Warlow and of keeping them, I would put obviously Warlow first, and Durant, and then Bartu. Outside of those 3 guys, who would you say is the next 2 guys? Because Scott said we would possibly keep 5 of these guys. Who do you think would be those 5?
I think it's Durant, Warlow, Bartu, Sproul, and Stupar.
That's what I got too.
I don't see a way that Acuna or Nyama make the team unless it's a practice squad spot without beating Stupar out on special teams, and that's just not happening.
Right.
And then Bradford's a camp body. Bradford is your typical, your new coach came in, he knows your new coach, he's the guy that kind of tells everybody what the scheme is because he's smart, and then gets cut in training camp.
I'm gonna have to disagree. I'm gonna say sub in Bradford for Sproul, but I would go Durant, Warlow, Bartu, Stupar, and Bradford as the 5, most likely.
Have you seen Bradford play linebacker?
No, I don't think anybody's seen Bradford play linebacker because he always gets cut.
Yeah, I've gone back and watched him in preseason games, and that's why he gets cut. He has no idea what he's doing playing linebacker. Literally no idea. He knows where he's supposed to be, but doesn't know how to break down, doesn't know the fundamental stuff of, hey, I'm a linebacker, let me go hit somebody. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's not a good linebacker at all. He can play special teams, and that's it.
Right, he was a former running back, right?
Former running back, and he might be better off moving back to running back.
Yeah, the only way I could see him making an impact on this team is special teams. As far as linebacker goes, no shot. But I don't disagree with Aaron saying that he would be a good special teams guy, as well as Stupar. I think Stupar is a tremendous special teams guy, which is why I think we all think he'll make the roster. But as far as Bradford goes, I just don't see it because he just can't play linebacker.
Yeah, I mean, Sproul may not be a starting caliber linebacker in the NFL, but he's at least worth keeping as a backup, and he's going to at least have as much special teams value as a Bartu or Bradford would. I don't think Bradford's this amazing special teams player that's worth keeping on the roster, especially with Stupar on it, especially with Weems on it.
Okay. The thing I'll say about Bradford is this. He kept getting re-signed by the Seahawks, and obviously there was something that he liked about him. I think, the comparison I would make is Ron Parker, who was cut by the Seahawks 6 times, and then once he got the opportunity in Kansas City, turned into be a pretty decent player. I think unlike other places where Bradford's been, because Atlanta's linebacker core is pretty much, there's the 3 starters, and then it's anybody's guess who's going to be the backups. I think he has a decent shot to finally showcase his abilities on defense this summer, and if he does, I think he'll make the team. But who knows?
Yeah, I mean, let's hope he does. Let's hope you're right. I mean, the one thing he's got going for him is Dan Quinn knows him well, with his time in Seattle. So he's got that going for him. So we'll just have to wait and see how it pans out in training camp.
All right. All right. Is it mailbag time, guys?
Yep.
All right. At 14 Team Mocker, he asks, in each scenario, does Hankerson or Hardy have a better season? All right, the first scenario is if Julio gets hurt. Second scenario is if Roddy gets hurt. And the third scenario if neither does. So I guess, who do you think between Hankerson and Hardy will be better in the event of an injury or not an injury this year?
For all 3, Justin Hardy, because he's just a better wide receiver.
Okay.
Yeah, his college stats speak for themselves. Even though they are college stats, he's got the FBS or the college FBS record for most receptions of all time in college football. So you got to go with him, in my opinion. As far as Hankerson goes, it'll be interesting to see how he plays out with the Falcons. I think he's a good wide receiver. I was at mini camp and he looked pretty good while the times I saw him catch the ball. So we'll see how that plays out. But at the moment, I would have to go with Hardy.
I would agree with you guys. Probably best bet is Hardy, but I do think if Julio gets hurt, then it's probably Hankerson because Hardy's not going to be an outside receiver, and Roddy's not really an outside receiver at this point in his career. So I think if Julio goes down, then really you're stuck with Hankerson or Devin Hester trying to be that guy that can help stretch the defense, and I think Hardy's not going to be that guy. Roddy's not going to be that guy. And I like Hankerson's chances a little bit better than I like Hester's at this point. So I would say that's the only scenario where Hankerson potentially outshines Justin Hardy.
Well, here's the thing. I think Hardy has the advantage there because under Kyle Shanahan has done a lot of West Coast offenses with that zone scheme behind it. And I think Hardy would have a huge advantage based on that. Hardy's more of that underneath attacking receiver. He can play inside or outside. He played inside or outside at the college level with a guy who's horrible at quarterback at Eastern Carolina and still set the record. So, I mean, basically Hardy is what we wished Harry Douglas could have been, is my view on that. And if Harry Douglas can put up 1,000 yards, I think Hardy can put up 1,000 yards easier.
Well, to be fair to my favorite Falcon ever, Harry Douglas, he was not a good outside receiver until, 2013, 2014, so like 6 years into his career. I don't think to me, Hardy's not going to be an outside receiver, especially not as a rookie. Now, maybe 6 years into his career, he'll have developed the sort of skills to be that guy, but against, any decent outside corner, he's not going to do much. So I disagree with you on that one, Scott. I think as an outside guy this year, maybe in 2018 or 2019 or something like that, but outside this year, no, he's not going to do anything. But I agree he's a better overall player than Hankerson. But it just depends on where you put him up.
I think we could all agree that the Falcons did a great job of replacing Harry Douglas, regardless of who went out there. So that's what I would say. I think we'll be all right with either guy playing the outside. I'm kind of in the mixed bag with each of you. I kind of agree with Scott, and I kind of agree with Aaron there. So we'll just have to see what happens.
I like the political answer, Colin.
Appreciate it.
All right. Next question is from @SouthernBoyJ. He has two questions, and I guess I'll ask both of them. Would you consider drafting the Falcons defense or Devontae Freeman for fantasy football? And the second question is, do you think our defense can finish top 15 and offense finish in the top 8?
Never draft a Falcons running back in fantasy football until they've established who they are. Example, when Warwick Dunn was here, you took Warwick Dunn. But, 2008, before we knew just how good Michael Turner could have been, I wasn't taking Michael Turner. But then Michael Turner balled out and looked amazing. So, 2009, he was my number one pick. 2010, he was my number one pick. So, let them establish who the number one running back is going to be, and then take the running back. But I wouldn't take either Devontae Freeman or Tevin Coleman right now. As far as the Falcons' defense, I don't ever draft a defense. I just kind of sign whoever the cheapest one, or whoever the best one looking left at the end of the draft is. So don't ask me for fantasy advice on defenses. Do I think the Falcons can finish top 15 on defense this year? Yeah. I think they can. Dan Quinn runs a coherent scheme, and you're going to see at least 6 new starters. So I hope to God they have a better defense. And the offense should easily finish in the top 8. They were top 8 last year. And they should be better with the offensive line if they stay healthy. That they could be a top 5 offense, top 3 offense if they stay healthy. I don't even feel like I'm going out on a limb saying that because they've just got so much skill position talent with Julio, Roddy, Hardy, Hankerson, Hester, Coleman, Freeman. They've got the talent. I mean, they may not have the tight end, but they've got the talent everywhere else. So,
yeah, I'm pretty much the same. As far as drafting a running back from the Falcons, last pick. But probably won't, just because you don't know what they're going to do. I would rather have Coleman over Devontae Freeman. I will not draft Devontae Freeman no matter what. Nothing against him. It's just not smart for my fantasy team. As far as the Falcons' defense goes, again, I'm not going to draft them. Maybe down the road when I need a backup and the Falcons are playing decent, then I'll pick them up. But I'm not going to draft him, and I'm not going to draft Freeman either. And I completely agree with Scott as far as the stats go. I think the the sky is the limit for the offense. We have weapons across the board. I wrote an article the other day about who's the most improved team in the NFC South, and I think it's bar none the Falcons. They have gone out and done a great job on both sides of the ball, filling holes and whatnot. Offensive line should be better. Did a good job of replacing Harry Douglas. Antoine Smith's another guy that nobody's talking about. That's a big play guy. Defense, we made a lot of improvements. So, I think they can be a top 15 defense for sure. Would I be surprised if they're not? No. But I wouldn't be surprised if they are either. I think they will hover around 15 somewhere, 15 to 20, possibly up to around 13. So we'll see how it goes.
Okay. Well, I would not draft the Falcons defense in a fantasy draft. I think at best you're thinking they're a bye-week defense, and I think that's basically you wait, see how they perform the first couple of games, and then, starting, week 4, week 5, when teams start having buys, then maybe you might pick them up off the waiver wire, but do not draft the Falcons defense. I think they can finish top 15 in scoring defense. I don't necessarily see them finishing top 15 in total defense. So I think they're going to be like they've consistently been the last decade plus when they've been pretty good on defenses, which is a bend but don't break defense. I would think about drafting Devontae Freeman maybe as my third or fourth running back, but only if I felt really good about my top 2 running backs and I was just drafting Devontae Freeman or taking a flyer on him as a bye week guy, and then maybe a couple of weeks into the season he emerges as a starter. But I would agree, Colin. I probably prefer Tevin Coleman over Devontae, even though I do think there's probably a better chance that Devontae will get the majority of touches early in the season. But by the time you start getting the bye weeks and stuff like that, Coleman might take over the spot. Will the Falcons' offense finish in the top 8? Yeah, I think there's no doubt that they'll finish in the top 8 scoring-wise. They've consistently done that most years. As long as Julio Jones is healthy, they're not going to have any trouble scoring points this year. And I think they have a pretty good chance of finishing in the top 8 total offense. Sorry. I think the offense is going to carry this team this year, and they are definitely poised if Matt Ryan and Julio Jones are healthy for most of this season, then they shouldn't have any problem finishing in the top 10 offensively this year. All right. Next question comes from @Fonzie1988. Who do you think will be the MVP of training camp this year?
That's tough. It all depends on who wins the running back position, because that's going to be the MVP, the MVP of training camp.
Yeah, Scott, you stole my decision there. I'm going to go with Tevin Coleman as my guy, even though I agree with Aaron, and I'm sticking with it. I think Freeman will get the majority of the reps for the first 2 to 3 weeks, but I think Coleman will establish himself in training camp and show to the fans and everybody else how good he really is. By week 4, week 5, he's going to be the full-time starter, and we'll see how good he can do. He might could be a 1,000-yard guy this year.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of somebody other than who you guys, the running back, and I guess I could cheat and say Julio just because he's, magnificent, in practice, because he's facing the Falcons defense. No offense to Desmond Trufant, but he's Julio Jones. Let's go with Vic Beasley. He'll be the MVP.
I'd love to see that.
All right. @DRock the Party asks, if the Falcons do give Warlow a new contract after this year, for how long and how much do you think it would be?
That's tough. Wow. I'd say 4 years, like $12 million. Because if he's playing well enough for them to give him a new contract, that means he's established himself as a starter. At the same time, he is going to be a restricted free agent. So I think they do just the standard 1 year offer, and then after this year they negotiate into that, or after next year they negotiate into that.
Yeah, I think the max. I mean, I could see a 5-year deal. Honestly, I could. Um, but a 4-year deal would be a lot more safe. Around if it's a 5-year deal, I'd say around 15 million total. So basically the same as what Scott said, but that's a really tough question to answer. It's really hard to look into the future and determine how good he's going to be this year. So that's a really tough question to answer.
Yeah, I think Scott's right. I think the most realistic answer is they'll just tender him at a 1 year contract as a restricted free agent. If he plays well this year, he'll probably get the second round tender. If he doesn't, then he might get the original free agent tender and basically be, you know, able to go somewhere without the Falcons getting compensation. But if they did give him a long-term deal, I'd probably say you're looking at something in the ballpark of what Brooks Reed or Justin Durant got, which I think was like average maybe like $4 million a year. You're probably talking about maybe 6 or 7 million guaranteed or something like that. But the Falcons really don't have to give Worrell a long-term deal unless he's like really, really, really good this year. And Scott may disagree, but I don't expect that out of him this season. All right, we got a couple of emails from Sheldon Allen. So we'll hit up these questions. His first question is, can you explain the Dan Quinn defensive scheme? What players do you think will have to be upgraded in 2016 to take this D to the next level?
I'm going to answer that second question before I answer the first question. One, I'd like to actually see him in 2015 before I say, hey, this guy needs to be upgraded. Because there might be guys that I think are going to be perfectly fine that suck. There might be guys that I think are going to be excellent, or that I think are going to suck that ball out. So, for all we know, we need to replace William Moore, and we don't know it yet because we haven't seen him out there. So, Dan Quinn's defensive system, I'm going to go based off of, I'm going to explain the line, then the linebackers, and then the coverage shell. Essentially, he runs a 4-man pass rush with an offset line to the weak side. On the strong side, you're going to have a 5 or 6 technique, which means he's shaded to the offensive tackle's outside shoulder. That's going to be your strong side defensive end. At nose tackle, you have a 1 technique guy playing basically in that gap right between the center and the guard on the strong side is where the nose tackle will play. Then on the weak side, you got a 3 technique who plays in that gap right between the guard and the tackle. And then all the way out wide, you're going to have Vic Beasley there basically, and he's going to be playing either a 9 technique, a 7 technique, which is essentially a farther shade off of the. It's about a step off the tackle into the gap where the tight end would normally be. So you're either going to see Beasley there, or you're going to see him farther out wide, or you're going to see him standing like a linebacker. Now, the linebackers traditionally in Quinn's scheme line up in the weak side linebackers, basically right behind the 3 technique defensive tackle, shaded about 5 yards off the ball. It's a 1-gap system, so everybody guards the gap right in front of them. The middle linebacker plays on the strong side, basically right behind the nose tackle, or shaded over a little bit more to the strong side. And then your strong side linebacker is pretty much where he would be if the Falcons were running a 3-4. Shaded right over the tight end, ready to attack that gap, playing more of a 2-gap. He's like the only guy in the whole system that'll 2-gap. Him or the strong side end. And then for the coverage shell, you've got a cover 3 90% of the time where you're going to have the outside corners covering deep, the center, the free safety playing a center field, and then the strong safety comes in and covers the middle area. So overall, pretty standard cover 3 defense with offset shades. The linebackers offset to the strong side, the line offsets to the weak side.
If everything Scott just said went over your head, the easy way of explaining Dan Quinn's system, Charles McDonald, our good friend, wrote a piece for Football Savages earlier today that basically breaks down the basics of the Dan Quinn's defensive scheme. So he laid it all out there if you need visual of basically what Scott just went over. To answer the second question, what players do I think will be upgraded? Scott's right. You have to see these guys play before you can make that determination. But if I was putting money on probably our three biggest needs on defense, it'll probably be strong side defensive end, middle linebacker, and free safety.
Yeah, I'm not about to get into the X's and O's like Scott just did there. Yeah, that kind of went over my head, kind of not. So, yeah, like Aaron said, you might need to go read that article to get a visual. But I would agree. I think the safety spot is the biggest question. Who knows who's going to start there? Possibly Ricardo Allen is actually my pick to win the job out of training camp. But, yeah, other than that, though, I don't think you can say anybody until you see him play, because that's really the only position that's just so up for grabs right now. You don't know who's going to start. But, yeah, that's what I got.
Okay. Sheldon's next question is Justin Hardy limited to being a slot receiver? Seems like he played all over the place at ECU.
I don't think he's limited to it. I think he's definitely an all-around receiver, and I think he can play pretty much anywhere. I don't see an issue with him. He can play outside. He's very good technically. That's where he's going to end up winning in the NFL, is with his technique. Great route runner. I think that's why Aaron's underrating him, is because he doesn't have the most ridiculous speed, the most ridiculous agility, any of that. He's just a good, sound wide receiver, and he catches pretty much everything thrown to him. He doesn't drop a lot of balls.
Well, once again, I do think he is limited to being a slot receiver, particularly early in his career. He is an excellent route runner, but he doesn't have the sort of elite burst and separation skills to just naturally get open. He has to rely on his route running. He's not very big. One of the things I noticed when I watched tape of him last year at ECU, when he faced good, quality corners like Kendall Fuller and Vernon Hargreaves of Virginia Tech and Florida, both guys that are projected to be first-round picks in next year's draft, he really struggled with their sort of physicality, beating the press. And being as an outside receiver, there's much more likely chance that he'll face a lot more press coverage there. And I think if he was to line up outside and play against a team that plays press, which more and more teams are doing nowadays, thanks to the success of the Seahawks, I think he'd be severely limited in the same way that Harry Douglas was very limited, beating press. I think Hardy has the potential to be a great slot corner. I compared him to Jarvis Landry in my scouting report of him that was on Falcons.com. Landry caught it like 80 passes last year, but basically he caught that many passes because he would run 5 yards downfield, turn around, and catch the ball. And I think Hardy is similar to that, and that doesn't really work as an outside receiver. I think, but obviously Landry's a good player. I think Hardy can be a very good player, and he'll be a guy that moves the chains a lot, but I don't see him as an outside guy.
I think the only thing holding him back from being an outside guy is, if you look at his height. I mean, Roddy White's 6 foot. Look at a guy like Emmanuel Sanders, who was able to put on the outside. Another short guy, 6 foot. But if you look at Emmanuel Sanders, he's got 4.3, 4.4 speed, which Hardy's got nowhere near that. So I see him more as an inside guy. I think he can be a tremendous guy because, like I said, he will be pressed as much, and he can use his technique and his skills just to get open and getting the ball in his hand, let things happen from there. So I think he can get on the outside. I don't think his height and his size is going to affect him there, but I think his speed and the press coverage will not be ideal for him.
Okay. Next question from Sheldon is, why isn't Julio used in every game how he was against the Packers? Saw him line up in the slot and on both sides of the field.
He will be used like that with Kyle Shanahan. If the usage of Andre Johnson or the usage of Deshaun Jackson is any clue, or not Deshaun Jackson, who was the receiver in Washington back in 12?
Garcon.
Yeah, he made Pierre Garcon look like a great receiver just by moving him around, having fun, putting him in position to win. You know, Josh Morgan was officially the other starter, but Henderson played a lot, Santana Moss played a lot, Aldrick Robinson played a lot, and still looked competent. I don't see an issue with Julio being moved around this year. The issue I think we're gonna see is that Roddy may not be moved around as much, or Hardy may not be moved around as much. Hardy may only be a slot receiver this year for Shanahan. Hester may not be moved around as much. He may only be an outside guy who runs screens or something like that. But when it comes to the number one receiver on the field, Shanahan is extremely creative in making sure that person gets used like the ridiculous beast that he is.
Yeah, if you put Julio in the middle, I mean, just imagine what that does to the guy going up. I mean, he was magical in that game. Broke the Lombardi or the Lambeau Field record for most yards as an opponent. So yeah, we definitely will see more of that in 2015. Kyle Shanahan does a great job of that, like Scott said. It's just smart to move a guy around. He's huge. He's fast. I mean, he can do anything. So you might as well line him up anywhere on the field. He's going to succeed no matter where you put him.
Yeah, I got nothing else to add to that. The reason why Julio wasn't used like that every game because Dirk Cutter wasn't very inventive as an offensive coordinator. So there's your answer. Next question, last question from Sheldon is, with the easiest schedule in the NFL, do you think the Falcons have a good chance of going to the playoffs / winning a playoff game? And what is your win-loss prediction for the Falcons this season? And what games do you think we win and which do you think we lose? So basically, Sheldon's asking us to break down the entire schedule, if you guys can do that briefly. I don't know.
I mean, it's tough, but let's have some fun. I do think the Falcons go 10-6, going down the schedule. The first week against the Eagles, I'm gonna mark that up as a loss. First game with the coach. Yeah, it's a Monday night. Yeah, it's a home game, but the Eagles are gonna be a tough team. Going to New York, I do think that they beat the Giants this year. The Giants just aren't as good. I think they lose to the Cowboys, start out 1-2. Hosting the Texans, I think they lose to the Texans, start out 1-3. But Washington, New Orleans, Tennessee, Tampa Bay, I think that's a nice 4-game win streak to go 5-3, or to be 5-3 at that point. Traveling out to San Francisco, I think they win that one. So 6-3, heading to the bye, come home, lose to the Colts, and then probably lose to the Vikings as well. So at that point, they'd be, 6-4. But the last 5 games of the season are Tampa Bay, Carolina, Jaguars, Carolina, Saints, and I think they split with Carolina and then beat the Bucs and Jags and Saints and finish 10-6.
Yeah, that's usually the record I tell everybody, but let's change it up. Let's just go down the list and see how many wins this is. Week 1, I actually think that's going to be a win. I think we're catching Philadelphia at the perfect time with their quarterback situation. I don't really know who's going to be starting for them, and they don't really know either. So I think that fits in perfectly for us, and I think we're going to win. I think we lose to New York and lose to Dallas back to back. I think we beat Houston in a very close game. I think the only reason we win that game is because we're at home. We beat Washington. We lose to New Orleans on the road. And then we beat Tennessee, Tampa Bay, and San Francisco 3 in a row. San Francisco just is so many bad things have happened to them. I don't know what else could at this point. So playing on the road in San Francisco, we've beat them there before, so I think we can do it again. I think 2009 was the last time we beat them there with Roddy White had that huge game. I think going to bye, we lose our first game to the Colts coming off of that. I think we redeem ourselves and beat Minnesota at home this year. We beat Tampa Bay. We lose to Carolina on the road. We beat Jacksonville on the road, beat Carolina, and beat the Saints. So not sure how many wins that is, but that's around 10 or 11.
Okay.
You said 11-5.
Okay.
I'm looking at the schedule, and usually I always say that the Falcons are going to probably win 10 or 11 games this year, but I'm looking at the schedule, and I'm thinking maybe they can get to 12. I think they run the table against the NFC East. I think it's a trash division. It's the most overrated division in the NFL. All 4 of those teams are 8-8 teams. Philadelphia is the best team in that division, and since we'll be at home on Monday Night Football, Georgia Dome's going to be rocking. I think we're going to win that game. Houston, I think, is one of our tougher matches. I think Indianapolis is one of our tougher matches. I think Minnesota is very underrated. They'll be good. They're going to beat us. I think we probably lose 1 game to Carolina. So I think that's 4 losses right there. If we can sweep Tampa Bay and sweep New Orleans, then you're looking at potentially a 12-4 season for the Falcons. I think that's probably best case scenario for them this year. And I'm feeling optimistic at this moment, so I'll go with 12-4 as their record. Maybe in 2 weeks from now I'll feel differently, but let's go with that. As for answering the first part of his question, I think we'll make the playoffs? I've been maintaining that since March. Winning a playoff game, it'll depend on the matchup. If they get the 1 or 2 seed, which I think will be hard to do with Seattle and Green Bay also in the NFC. But if they do go 12-4, then there's a pretty good shot they'll get one of those top 2 seeds. Then they have a very good chance of winning a playoff game. I don't know. I think if we get if we get a home game, if we win the division, get that home game, we're playing a team from the NFC East, then I think there's a very good chance that we win a playoff game. If we end up having to play Minnesota again, I think that's going to be a little tougher. Just because I think Minnesota's defense is going to be very, very good, and Adrian Peterson is always very, very good, and that's always a tough matchup for the Falcons.
Yeah, I think we can win a playoff game. We'd have to win the division to do so to get that home game. If we come in as a wild card, I don't think we'll get the job done. But I don't see a team in the NFC South getting a wild card berth this year. I just don't. I think we'll only have one team and be the division winner, and I think that'll be us.
I'll agree with that.
All right. Well, everyone, that is our show this week. I want to thank Colin for coming on the show and joining us. You can find him writing at bloggingdirty.com. He is also on Twitter at bloggingdirty. Scott is at Scott Karasik. You can find his stuff now at Pro Football Spot. I am at Falcons. Falcons.com is temporarily down, but it should be back shortly. Use the hashtag Falcons mailbag to get your question on the show. You can tweet at Scott or I, or you can tweet at the show's Twitter handle is FalconsPFC. And next week we'll be talking, defensive backs, Scott, or are we going to split into corners and safeties?
I will split into corners and safeties because we've got 2 more weeks to review units, and that should give us 2 more weeks worth of stuff until training camp.
You don't want to spend a whole week on special teams, Scott?
I think we can throw special teams in with safeties.
Okay, probably. You're probably right. It's not like it's big
Four
discussion.
guys. It's 4 guys. We want to do special teams so bad we can do it right now in about 10 minutes.
Pretty much. Same team. Spoiler alert, it's the same guys that were last year.
Yeah, the exact same guys, the entire way down. Kicker, punter, long snapper, and return specialist. That 4-man unit, which is arguably the best in the NFL, is returning.
There you go. All right, we nailed that one. All right, guys. Yeah, thanks again, Colin. You got anything else you want to plug or say before we jet out of here?
No, I just appreciate you guys having me on, and hopefully we can do it again sometime.
Yeah, we're always looking for people during the season, so we'll definitely try to get you back on.
Sounds good.